But I just feel like the thing that trying to kind of drives me crazy here is like you have a full collection of Infinity Stones, but they only work in your
Gone.
dimension.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean,
And
if you go to like some other timeline or something like that, those Infinity Stones don't do anything. They're
well, because
basically
they're
just pretty
tuned. Remember,
rocks.
they're supposed to
Yeah,
be
I know.
the reason why the universe or the universal timeline kind of runs in the same flow.
Yeah, for
So those
sure.
are there's the reason why they only work in your timeline. That's why if you go to the TVA, you'll have like these drawers
Hmm.
full of infinity stones that do nothing.
Yeah, that's right. Well, sorry.
Oh,
Hey, we
sorry,
were just
I hit the
having
button,
a
or you hit
totally.
the
I hit the button.
button.
That was weird. I hit
See,
the button and we're a half hour early. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a podcast where two old guys talk about. You know what's funny is like we kind of got away from this where the name of our show is Best of Our Week.
yeah, yeah.
And we stopped talking about the best of our
The rest of
week.
our week, yeah. For a few weeks, we weren't. We were talking about other things,
We were
but
just like, this is what angers me. And old
this
guys
week,
talk
on
about
the
stuff that
podcast,
all the time.
we should start
But
that way. Yeah.
one of the things that is definitely making us happy this week is we're going to be chatting out Apple's new announcement. We're going to be talking about some Huawei folding action.
Yeah,
And
like
to do that, we have a buddy joining our show this week, one Mr. Michael Peppertech. What is
yeah,
up,
better.
sir?
I like this. We'll keep shoveling around. We'll see who people goes out. Yes, yes. How you
I
doing,
was
sir?
like, I was like, don't make me nervous. We had the whole pre-stream and the full layout, and now you're gonna bring me in and cropped in. I'm gonna have to adjust everything.
And
Nah,
like suddenly it's like
is-
face shot. I'm like, what?
it's
No.
like you've got to pick and choose like which action you're gonna do first. So I brought you on first, and then we reformatted. But everything should be fine right now. Michael, this is long overdue. We
Yep.
kind of talked about this for a while now, bringing you on and just having a fun chat. And thank you for staying up late so that you could accommodate this conversation. But thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
You know
Episode
what?
171.
I'm
It's an honor.
almost always up late, anyways, because insomnia is a thing.
Yeah,
That is true.
I get tired,
brutal.
so what happens is I get tired about 10:30. But then all of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute. Oh, Juan and TK have their live stream tonight, so I like go to the bathroom and then I go to sit down and I'm wide awake. And then when you guys end your live stream, depending on how late it goes, sometimes it's 1:30 in the morning my time.
Oh wow.
I am
yeah.
all of a sudden wide awake till 2:30. But even without a
Yeah.
live stream, that just happens. It's like, or my son will be up. I thought he went us to bed like 2 hours ago, and he'll be up and he'll come out and want something, and then I'm wide awake, and the brain just doesn't
Yeah.
shut down. It's not got a, it's loaded up everything in RAM, and it just won't clear out.
I just need that pin tool, hard reset. For me, I make the mistake of watching TV late at night and then like, oh, I'm really tired now. I should go to bed, but then I have to get up and brush my teeth and do all that other stuff, and then I'm wide awake because I was about to fall asleep on the couch. But this is not a podcast about old guys talking
I was
about.
about to say, which show
bedtime
did we start
routines.
this week? Best of our week or the
I'm
best
trying to
nap
get
of our
it
week?
because
we
I
could
don't want to
definitely
keep
do that
Michael
show.
up till like 3 a.m.
We changed
I'm
the
trying to
title.
get
It's
away
it's
from-
WEAK. We're all weak now.
right. It's great.
Take out the best
So,
of and then the week. Sorry.
So I want to kick us off.
Yeah.
Obviously, the only tech news story worth talking about, the most important story of the week. I feel like everybody is just like latched onto this.
Yes.
Is that the Android 15 developer QPR1 Beta 2?
Just
The
dropped.
developer beta just dropped, and now on the Pixel tablet we've got floating windows.
I was about to talk about that exact same thing.
I don't think anything has been more important than that. Is that now you've got kind of like a desktop mode Windows style UI on the Pixel tablet.
On
See,
the actual
that,
tablet.
That makes the Pixel tablet finally better than the Nest the Nest Plus that we had before. They're starting to push beyond, try to make it into a smart hub. But I digress. I think it's a great feature, and we're in the middle of September. We still have no deadline, no clear line of when Android 15 is coming out.
Yeah, I was really upset. I saw the blog post come out from the Google developer blog, and I immediately it takes so long to update the software on a Pixel. It
anything
just
relating
takes
to
forever.
anything relating to Pixel software will take there was a 15 megabyte update that took almost
so
2 hours. I'm like, why does it take that? And it
So
keeps asking me, are you sure? And I'm like,
yeah,
yes.
do you want to resume?
I'm the one who
Would
hit
you
the
like to do
button.
this
Yeah.
overnight?
Yeah,
So
please.
I start doing the update. I set up the camera. I just want to do like a little hands-on video. And just as I'm shooting the video, Mishal just blasts, "Hey everybody, look at this cool feature on the Pixel Town." And you're like, "Oh man." I know I wasn't going to be first, but Mishal totally beat me to the punch. Michael, have you been playing with any of the Android betas or developer previews?
No, only because basically the last two Android devices that are really in would be, well, one of them is right here, the
Oh,
Nothing
Oh,
Phone
the
hey.
nothing.
2A.
That's
Like
Little
absolutely
nothing
nothing.
action.
one of my favorite devices, like makes me hope for the Nothing Phone 3 and want the little bit of, not that the 7200 Pro is bad, but like that little extra oomph would be
Mhm.
Yeah.
nice. And but apart from that, like the operating system being so smooth,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Yeah.
like Pixel, but to me it's like better because it doesn't have some of the things that I'm not going to use.
Mhm.
And I can get
That
those
has been,
things. Like I can
yeah,
get
it has.
those things. Like right here, I have, I use Gemini. I hotspotted it to my iPhone and freaked out my parents by showing them Gemini Live. So,
Hey guys,
you
do
know,
you want
my,
to have an emotional relationship with your phone? I think
the
you
funny
do.
the funny thing with that is it was like the end of July, I think it was. I went to cancel my Google Cloud and they're like, "How about we just give you 3 months for free of 2 terabyte?" So then when I
Okay.
went to sign up for Gemini, they're like, "How about we give you Gemini Live for the rest of those free periods?" So instead of like 1 month, I have till the end of November now with
That
Gemini
certainly
Advanced,
doesn't
like
that
$60
doesn't
worth
suck.
of subscription for free.
I love it.
It
Well,
has its own merits. I'll probably say that I've used it a couple of times, but it doesn't have it's not a very well connected. It has a lot of limitations.
it feels
Like
very
you can
siloed.
well, because you can talk to it, you can get some ideas from it, but like once you ask it
Mm-hmm.
to do things, like show me images of blah blah, like I can't show images right now. I'm only here to talk. Like you know what I mean? You have to use
Yeah.
the text-based search functionality to get that function. That's where it's leveraging the assistant, and they've integrated a lot of functions in there now. When you command it, you'll see the word assistant on the top left. So they're really trying to
Mm-hmm.
merge assistant and Gemini together, but they're still in that, yeah, working out
I
the
still
kinks.
feel like I still can't rely on Gemini for
It
I
anything
want to say the
because like
V3, or I think there was one device I remember started. It came with Gemini. It didn't even have the assistant first. Like
mm-hmm.
Gemini was preloaded. I think that's going to be a thing from now on, where
Oh, it
I think
totally
most
will be.
devices are going to start off with Gemini preloaded on their device,
But
so
and then you're
this
setting it up.
is
You can pick which one you want.
I can't disclose the company, but I had a sit down.
Hmm.
People keep hitting me up to like, hey, do you want to consult on our startup? And you're like, not really, but I will. Um, and I'm talking to a company, and they're looking at a hardware play for some AI software, and it's just time and time and time again. I think we have tried to impress consumers with how much we can mimic how a human might talk,
Hmm.
and we have completely avoided just the basics on what would really make a phone improve your day. And it's things like, I don't want Gemini to supplant Google Assistant while Gemini can't do the really simple basic actions that I like to use with Google Assistant. Like we joke about it, like, oh, it's only there to set timers. Well, yeah, as a voice action, that's a really useful, abbreviated, short, punchy, I
Hmm.
want it to do this. And it's things like on my watch, I've got this really streamlined way to do speech to text to reply to a text message.
Hmm.
I want Gemini to do what my Amazfit watch can do. A notification pops up, and in natural language, I say, oh, reply to that last notification. I'll get bread at the supermarket, send. All in voice. And like Google, with the most incredible AI platform the world has ever seen, isn't letting us do things like Gemini, reduce my screen brightness.
It's
Gemini,
almost
open up
like
my calendar.
it's almost like it's a team separate from the original team that's doing Gemini.
feels so siloed. Like
It
they're
feels like the
not
new kids on the block who just
collaborating.
joined the team. They're like suddenly, hey, I think I could do better.
Else it's happening. So I was being mostly facetious
No, I know.
because to me there is nothing more important than getting functional desktop modes on mobile devices. But I feel like this kind of segues us.
Oh, related to that is the thing that I brought up to you that actually we went
Yes.
back and forth on and kind of got me here to begin with is
Yes.
TK, do you have the Nothing Phone 2A at all? Did you get the 2A?
I do have the 2A. I don't think I have it
The
next
only
to me.
one
I
who
have the
doesn't
2.
have a nothing in
Do you
house.
have
This is-
any do you have any displays that use Miracast? Not Chromecast, but Miracast.
Not in the studio. In the
So-
house, yes.
Oh,
I have
yeah,
a
'cause
very
you'd need, like,
old
a next
projector
Mhm.
that it's a Bridgestone.
Actually, I take that back. I just got a projector from IFA that does support Miracast.
So I have a
I gotta boot it up and I gotta go get it. Essentially, it's not in the studio.
I have this old Bridgestone projector that's got JBL speakers. I paid like $200 for it. It was a short throw projector. I think it was like $2,500 when it originally came out. I've had it for 6 years. I paid $200 for it, and it has Miracast. And I was messing around with my Nothing Phone 2A.
Mhm.
If you go into developer options and enable the like desktop mode,
Mhm.
which it's like, wait a minute, it doesn't do video over USB. But if you cast to a Miracast, not a Chromecast, but a Miracast display, it has an actual somewhat usable desktop mode. I sent Juan the picture. I can actually, I think I can pull it up of using it on the wall, and like you can do window mode, and it doesn't have the broken.
So it's kind of like how
Like start menu where it's like crammed together, the broken version of it. Like
Oh, no,
some
no,
of the other
yeah.
devices, it has the full on like nice looking
Oh wow, okay.
version of it, kind of like the LG, like the old LG version.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, even with Honor now, their desktop mode is only functional through casting,
Mhm.
and it does support Miracast because I did test that out when I was in Berlin with the Yobber T2 projector that I got from them during my trip there, and that one does support it. So I was surprised that it worked very well, but I did not have any of the Nothing phones with me, so I for that one, although surprisingly I was at a Nothing party. That was interesting. So that there was just it was a good experience. But yeah, I'll definitely check it out. I do have something that supports it as far as just like that. Again, it's a tiny projector.
I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but that's kind of what it
Oh,
looks
yeah.
like.
Yeah.
And then like you can see in the background that there are
Oh,
icons
wow.
on the desktop. So like you can actually place icons on the desktop. Now the griddings for it is a little weird. And then that's like your full on, and it's not like crammed together as like the start menu it's on the left side, which is a
You have
little
access
weird.
to the apps. You can scroll through your app drawer. That's
You
actually not
can
Is-
window them and
Mhm.
like you can put apps on the desktop. It's not just like, and they stay there the next time you open it.
bad.
It's not, it's not weird.
It's
No, no,
just
And
so crazy
it was
to me
fluid
that,
for
like,
using this on a projector that's like 10-year-old projector, and it's
Nah, that's
was
great.
pretty smooth with, you're using a $350 phone and like sitting there and it wasn't getting hot. Like I could connect a keyboard and mouse up. Obviously, that's the only way you can do it because it
Oh,
doesn't do the on
No,
display
exactly.
trackpad
There's
thing.
no trackpad.
Yeah.
Yeah, the software
But-
isn't designed. But yeah, you're right. Keyboard and mouse, you could definitely function, and the fact
but
that you're able to put
it's-
it on such a large display, it's actually pretty good.
It's
Like you
still
could take
crazy
that
to
with you
me
on a
that
hotel.
We've gone all this time, and I've been like rabid for this
Mhm.
kind of stuff, but it's taken so long to just start getting these basic steps in an alternate video out mode, an
Yeah.
alternate desktop view mode. And it's like on the one hand, it's like I'm happy that we're getting there. I'm happy that a Pixel can finally send information to another display through a cable.
Yeah,
But it
and
also that's kind of acid in my mouth that I said is finally able to do a basic computing thing like send information to another display. I just feel like we should be farther along, but I do want us to kind of sort of stay a little more time efficient and jump on
Absolutely.
the main topic here. My joking notwithstanding, obviously, whenever Apple has a big event, they kind of suck up all of the news.
I was about to say
for
they
that
suck
week.
the air out of the universe where
little
nothing
bit.
else can exist.
Now, here's one of the funny things is I don't. In years past, like if there was kind of like an underwhelming announcement from Apple, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like you could go to the social media and you could see kind of a breakdown. Like there are obviously the diehard haters that will just hate everything that Apple does, and then there are the diehard like Apple sheep who
Mm-hmm.
will just praise everything Apple does, praise everything that Apple does. But you could kind of get a sense in the middle
Yeah.
if the overall sentiment was a little more enthusiastic or a little more critical. And I don't feel like that's true anymore. Like, if I go to Threads, it is this polarized, hard split, totally ratcheted, divisive. You're either the worstest hater in the world or you're the most glowing fanboy in the world. And I don't trust now. What was the feeling? What was the sentiment? Did people think like this stuff was really cool? I walked away from the Apple keynote underwhelmed. I didn't feel like they brought um, I don't feel like they brought as much practical improvement and innovation as the excitement, the enthusiasm of the hand gestures and the presentation coaching might have led others to believe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those like before we even talk about Apple, what have your experience has been? Do you think people were digging this, or do you think that this was as underwhelming for even for like Apple fans, as underwhelming as it kind of like plays for the Android side of this conversation?
I yeah. I, I normally want to jump in with this, but I obviously I'll say I don't use iPhone devices on the daily as a daily driver. I have one for work, and it is literally the only reason why I even have an iPhone in there. And it's an iPhone 13, so it's not even relating to what they've
It's the
done.
good one.
It's actually the last good one, if you think about it. The last good one in the US before they ditched the SIM card and we started doing a whole bunch of different things specifically for us. But I wanted to actually say, Michael, I don't know if you do use iPhones, generally, or you switch when you're testing them. How did you feel? How was that for you? I'll leave it up to you since you're our guest. I'll have you lead with us, and then we can follow your suite.
I will predicate it with saying I know that a lot of the things that they touched on are things that exist in some like format on other devices. Like,
Hmm.
Sony's had the capture button, but some of the
Mm-hmm.
ways, like, it's not just a capture button. And what made me laugh was how quickly they skipped over the fact that, like, oh, you can use this to do visual AI. And then also, we're going to benefit from Google's image search. Like, they just kind of breezed over that little part. And I was like, wait a minute, that's kind of cool. But what was cool to me as somebody who, okay, so like you guys talked about, you don't really use, them as is
Hmm.
I see kind of the history of how Apple got to this point, like the image recognition within photos, where it recognizes, where you can have it will recognize like the type of flower or the type of animal or whatever that's existed for like 10 years now. And
Hmm.
they're
Yeah.
using this in physical hardware in a visual search. And I'm like, okay, you can bring up Google and use Google Lens, but I feel like this is the next step. So, originally search, you had to Google search, you type it in, right? And you
Yep.
did your Google search and it put out things. Then the next step was, well, we're going to talk to our phones and it's going to put up things. Now it's our eyes. So somebody who maybe they can't speak can still pull it up and like, okay, this is what I want to find information about, or maybe your hands have issues. Like an accessibility thing is how I
Oh,
saw it.
yeah.
And even like, oh yeah, you have on-screen control that you can do some of the same things, but having haptic feedback and having it be some of a button speaks to some of the accessibility, where I wish on some of the Android side, and Google I think is the best at this as far as accessibility, that's some of the things I wish was more of a focus for people who are like visually impaired, hearing impaired. And a lot of the event, like with the AirPods, touched on hearing impairment and
Yeah.
the idea of like hearing testing and stuff. And now there was some false information in there. Like I laughed when I'm like, you're not going to get ANC without your ears being plugged.
Oh,
With
there's yeah.
Well,
with the middle
so
ground, with the middle ground, you're
there,
not going to get as you can get it, but you're not going to get as full because
yeah.
you don't have the ear
Who?
tips in there. You're going to have a passive version, but
TK's
it's
going to have to
weird.
correct me on this, but I do think there was an open ear Huawei. One of the Huawei buds,
Oh.
they did. So what happens is it still blasts audio into the ear, but what they're doing is trying to do phase cancellation so that you don't hear the noise around you, but it is set up to keep your ear open. When it comes to the hearing health stuff, and I did like a whole series in 2020
Mhm.
called 2020 Hearing. The thing that really bothers me about Apple's conversation in this space is I feel they are the manufacturer most responsible for teaching consumers bad listening habits. They've never had good in-ear solutions that were delivered with their products. From the iPod on, it's always been these really loud driver earbuds that sit right in front of the ear canal, and they were the ones that helped usher in the consumer revolution with digital music and later on with streaming audio. And so for them to now be like, well, like 12 years, 14 years after the launch of the iPhone, everybody's deaf. Let's now sell the solution to the
Well,
problem that we
and,
helped contribute to
and in a
is a
weird
little
way,
tone deaf.
yeah,
Literally a little
but
tone
the
deaf.
solution that they're offering, which I felt like, again, I think to Michael's point, a lot of the things we've seen from Apple during their event has been present in the market in some way, shape, or form. Um, the testing that they're referring to, essentially, which is the tonal test, it's a test that essentially tests, basically lets you figure out, or lets the system figure out what levels are you able to hear, or how old your hearing is. For the lack of a better term, and then it tunes the music or the playback of the audio to basically hit that specific wavelength so that you're able to listen to at least the majority of what you're able to in a good experience. So it's essentially it's
Yeah.
personalizing the audio to the listener. It
Sure.
doesn't help reduce or manage any hearing loss. That wasn't it wasn't a in the way I looked at it essentially is, yeah, it's like you're getting a custom EQ for your ears. Depending how
Sure.
old you are, whatever you
Well,
can hear, that's a
but
solution, but
they
it's not
are
a hearing repair, or it's not a,
no.
I don't feel like it's a maintenance.
The one thing that I will give them a little credit on,
Hmm.
a little, um, the solution that they're talking about is what we've been playing with. Like for me, there was this whole category of earbuds that completely fell apart.
Hmm.
They were called hearables. And so they took all of that noise reduction and noise canceling technology to then try and amplify human speech in busy environments. So it wasn't noise canceling just to make the surrounding environment around you quieter and to isolate your ears. It was to try and pull out, if there is speech, how do we reduce the background noise around you?
Yeah.
And the FDA has now approved, I want to say it's the AirPods Pro 2. Someone's gonna have to correct me on this too. I'm
Yes.
a little underread on this, but has now approved this using that older protocol where Apple was trying to take their AirPods and you could use like the microphones on the phone and the AirPods would act as an amplification device for people who are hard of hearing. Now it's like they're trying to mimic those older hearables that were earbuds, but they focused on isolating human speech around you. So
Hmm.
there is that step too. So what you're talking about is the consumption side.
Yeah.
Here, the interactive and the conversation side is still they are trying to address it. I am not thrilled that in the consumer space we're not properly teaching people what the problem is, but then we're letting Apple sell the solution to the problem that they helped create. And I did that tour where I was working with one of my old friends from high school. She's a high school teacher now, and I would ask a group of high school students, so who turns their AirPods all the way up? And like everyone in the class except for like two kids raised their hands. And then I asked like one of the kids, like, well, okay, you don't turn your AirPods all the way up. And he was like, no, I do. I just didn't feel like raising my hand. It was like, we haven't done a good job of impressing upon young people where we're now seeing skyrocketing rates of hearing loss. One of the problems is how you're consuming this content, how you're consuming this media. But now they're going to look at something like this and say, "Oh, well, it's okay. The same earpods that gave me hearing loss and hearing damage could also be the solution." And I'll be totally I already own what I owned that caused the problem. I already own the thing that will solve the problem that they
Yeah.
caused. And instead of kind of preventing people from having those issues in the first place, we're just sort of selling them more expensive solutions that will burn out faster because they're tiny little earpod battery things.
Well, I
You
mean,
know,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
you know how on like when you plug in earbuds and some with some wireless earbuds too with Android devices, it will tell you like when you turn the volume up, it will show red and it says don't
The
turn it
nag,
above this or
yeah.
whatever. What I would like to see that's kind of interesting, and with the watches I have tested, I haven't seen this happen. One of the things that Apple kind of started doing a couple years ago was where it tells you when the decibel level around you is dangerously
Yeah.
high for your hearing. Like
No,
on the Apple Watch, that's something that's
Mm-hmm.
they brought like a couple years ago to see
you.
more of that. And like same thing with the
TicWatch had it,
earbuds,
and they
like
got rid of it. And I sent them a really angry email, like, bring back the hearing health notification on the TicWatch, and they still
and same
haven't.
thing with the earbuds. It's like, why are we not getting prompts like when you hit a certain volume level? Since all of these have microphones in them that pick up the
Yeah.
sound from the inside, because that's how it's able to know what sound's coming in and what to block out for like the ANC and stuff. It's already there and it's existed for years. The one thing that I thought was kind of interesting was that they introduced a regular AirPod at basically $60 cheaper than the previous regular AirPod by bringing it to 129, where the previous was way up at 189, which was always ridiculously too expensive. And then they made the middle one instead of 189, 179, and they brought some of the pro features in. It's like the Pro Lite, or the, if you want to call
A
it, like
little bit, yeah.
it doesn't have the ear tips, but you get like some of the ANC and like the transparency stuff.
Well,
And then the
I
pros
think the Find
now
My
get
also.
the
Mhm.
yeah, and the Find My and like wireless charging and some of the, and then the pros are like all of that, but the ear tips and like the ability to use the microphones to pick up and enhance the vocals. But what's weird to me is that vocal stuff could just, like so many things now, could just be a software update that should work. I mean, that's what they're doing. That's why they didn't
Yeah.
release new AirPods Pro, essentially.
I,
And so is some of that FDA approval thing. Like they could have done it last year if the FDA would have approved it, because that seems to
it,
be what it is. Like even one of the other things that was announced and then at the event, and then today they're like, oh yeah, it's passed through. Was like with the watch with like the sleep apnea stuff that they talked about.
yeah.
Like they were working on theirs getting approved, and then 2 days later they're like, yep, we got it. Um, and I think that's a bad thing too, because I feel like Apple gets so people are going to be surprised because everybody thinks, oh, I'm some Apple sheep, but like, so here's one of the criticisms I had. They announced these features and they say we're working with the FDA to get approval. Do you think that Apple does that thinking like we're a huge company? If the FDA doesn't approve it, it's going to make the FDA look bad.
Yes.
To a certain, yeah.
I completely feel like they have a market pressure. They have a thumb on the scale that they will be given special considerations for making very exacting claims that then they will broadly discuss in their marketing. And I feel it misrepresents what the products really do. But they got FDA approval for this specific aspect of what they're trying to address. And then that they just run with it. If something gets in the way, look at what they're trying to do with Apple Intelligence in the EU. EU has
Oh.
all of these really strict consumer privacy and data privacy and copyright laws and everything. And Apple's throwing this temper tantrum where they're not putting Apple Intelligence on phones in the EU because I think they want their users to put pressure on their governments. But that's also a different kind of regulatory space where they don't seem to care about, just like the optics on that. If that were to happen here, because it's an American company, it's America, it's the tech company that's going to fight those evil Chinese, it's Apple versus the rest of the world. There's no way that we would entertain that here. We would roll over immediately and give Apple everything that they want, tax breaks and sweetheart deals, repatriate cash that they've socked away in like the Cayman Islands. Anything Apple wants,
One of the
we'll do.
things you
But that's
touched
not
on,
gonna help there, right? With
one of the
what's going
things you
on.
touched on with kind of talking about, Apple created the problem of hearing loss and now they're fixing it, made me think of contradictions. And so it's interesting because, you brought up Apple Intelligence, right? And there's this huge thing of like, okay, it's only on the Pro models from last year and the new devices from this year. So there's some cutoff. But then at the same time, in the same event where they talk about that, they talk about like the iPhone 16s were developed from ground up for this AI stuff. They brought
They weren't.
features to the old AirPods, and they brought features that are on the Series 10 Apple Watch to the Series 9 and the Ultra 2. So essentially, they're like, well, you kind of need to get a new device to get some features, but on these, you don't.
Well, Samsung did the same.
So it's kind of a contradictory thing. I know it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it
though,
was
'cause
gate
it's like,
kept for a certain amount of months
it's like,
before it was allowed to be on older devices. I mean, the reality, yeah, a lot of that is software. Not much of it is hardware. There is some. I'm sure there are certain levels of the processor, the new chip that they came out with on both the new 16s and the 16 Pros series. But the reality of the matter is, they don't want to piss off everybody else in previous years. Like, and you said that the Pros from last year are the only ones who are getting, technically Apple Intelligence, and those are the only ones from the 15 series. And if you don't, then you're SOL. At that point, I guess your phone is old and you need to just drop it and get a new one. I think the overall function of what they're trying to do and their problems in the EU is that, and they're also the way they presented it in the show during their presentation. They say all of these things. They mention all of them. They don't mention how much of that is on device, how much of that is on server. But it also says, depending if you want to share your information, they always caveat that by saying that it's if you want to share your data. It means if you don't want to share your data, some of these things just don't work. So the term intelligence for me, what they're trying to do right now is they're trying to keep it a little bit of a mystere. They're keeping that, cloak and dagger type of situation. You don't know what is real on device, what is not. And if you don't share your data, how much of that just goes out the door? Like, does any of the ChatGPT integration? Obviously, at ChatGPT, you do need to share information with it. If you don't, it doesn't know what to do.
From what I've been able to gather and do in my testing with the betas is anything that's technically Apple Intelligence is on device. It's when it's like reaching out to do like the Google searches and the ChatGPT and like the third party stuff. Obviously, that's not stored locally because, well, you're going to store all of Google on like literally Google search on your device. You can't really do that. Same thing with ChatGPT. It's got to reach out. So that's kind of the interesting like differential between like how they treat it. It's kind of like, here's what we're doing that's on device, like the writing tools and some of the image and like the cleanup, like when they're Magic Eraser kind of thing, when you go to do it, it installs like a 10 meg file that's for that. So if you don't ever use that feature, that's 10 megs that are not on your device essentially until you go to do it. Same thing when you turned on Apple Intelligence, it essentially installed everything that's on top of Siri. Like Juan was talking about with Gemini earlier, instead of doing like, here's Google Assistant new version, it's here's a completely different thing where most of the stuff that was in Google Assistant, we're not really making it work here, and you have to toggle over to that. So like one of the things that was interesting to me is like I asked it a recipe. I asked Gemini Live like a recipe, like I want to make a strawberry cheesecake, and it starts listing off stuff. And partway through, I interrupt it and I go, "Well, I already have cream cheese. What else?" But then when you're done, you don't have a visual list. Until you toggle back to your history, until you go back, and then your history shows it, or you ask it again to the regular Gemini, and just waste all the time that you just took. They need to combine them. So like Live should still give you a visual text.
Yeah.
Like Like, can you imagine if I walked up to you, Juan, and I'm like, "Can I have that recipe for the cheesecake?" And you just,
Yes,
and
I
I'm
would like
like,
to
and
tell you the recipe for this
and I
cheesecake,
was
and it
like,
has these ingredients into it. But
and I was like,
some people like to use graham cracker crusts, but some people could also use a cookie crust. But make sure you get this and this kind of condensed milk, so that when you do the baking, and you're like,
but here's the thing.
You lost
So,
me at graham crackers question.
or
Yeah.
yeah, let's say the three of us were gonna get together, and we were gonna hang out, and we're bringing our family, and we're gonna hang out, and we're gonna have some dinner party, and you brought some dessert, and or your wife, maybe your wife brought some dessert, and I was like, I really like that recipe, and you just start rattling off what it is, and I'm like,
Yeah.
do you have a piece of paper I
No,
can write that
hold
down
on.
with? And you're like, nope, you have to memorize it. You cannot have a
Sorry,
piece
yeah,
of
we don't-
paper. Sorry.
because
We don't
also
do that.
my talking through the recipe has already burned a small lake's worth of water in a data center, and me going back to write out all of these ingredients for you again is also going to kill another small community's worth of water and terawatts of electricity. So maybe just pay attention better the first time I
It's a
explain it, and then
conundrum
we won't have this
because,
issue.
so
You know what you need to do? Hold on. I got it. So you always need to have two pixels. So one,
One
you talk
with
to Gemini.
regular-
Hold on. You have one, you talk to Gemini, and as Gemini is explaining how to make your cheesecake, you have the other pixel doing recorder with speech to text transcription, and then it'll do a summation.
I'll transcribe for you. Yeah.
That's it. So you just
That's
need
the
to always
solution.
spend. So like what? I've got the Pixel 9 Pro XL. You just need to spend $2,200 on pixels, and then you can have a closed loop of one pixel doing all of the web searching and the other pixel doing all of the recording and transcribing.
The assistant needs an assistant. That is the next level.
I
That
love
is
it. So
2024. That's how we finish it.
I do kind of want to get through some of the actual devices and just see like if there's anything that again I will always go on a 2-hour long rant about how AI is stupid with my friends, but I do take some umbrage that everything was that over the top, super slick, demonstrative. We built this from the ground up to be the best iPhone we've ever made. And I take some exception. Like you look at the iPhone 16, nothing about the iPhone 16 feels built from the ground up. It feels like you added a button and you gave it more RAM. That's the iPhone 16.
And you moved the cameras a little bit because you decided to go back to change the
okay,
organization.
so I want to bring that up. Is this some acknowledgement that Apple is looking at their ecosystem and realizing just because we put out Vision Pro doesn't mean that people might not be trying to utilize Vision Pro style features on base model numbered iPhones, non-pros? So when you move those camera sensors, because the companion sensor is the ultra wide, right?
yes.
Well, that's how you make your 3D video
Stereoscopic
for Vision
video.
Pro, right?
You need
So
two cameras side by side. They can't be on. They have to be at the same level so that you're
Right.
getting the
That's what I'm
stereo.
saying though.
Yeah,
Is so iPhone 16 looks like it was. We look at that as the redesign. I loved that. The GIF of someone just in Photoshop.
Yeah.
Moving the camera and like, well, there's iPhone 16.
The designer
that's all
of the
it was.
iPhone 16 last
And-
minute right before the show starts.
But is this acknowledgement that they're looking at their ecosystem? Like, if you can't shoot spatial video, whatever stupid brand name they've come up with, 3D video. We've had 3D video since the early HTC days, but it needed new branding. Let me tell you.
The HTC Evo 3D. Yep.
Is this their acknowledgement that those features need to also go up the food chain too? You can't just sell Vision Pro if only people buying the most expensive iPhones get to play with that kind of feature.
It could be. It could be an ecosystem thing. It could be finally that they're cleaning up the ecosystem. It's a consistent story that they're able to tie the base 16 to be able to shoot content, and then you'd buy the 16 and then you can get it. Vision Pro 2, or obviously at the end of the day, it's an ecosystem. It is the Apple ecosystem. It's a walled garden. So if they make it work better, then it is to their benefit. If it doesn't, then it is to their detriment. And I think that's at the end of the day that they benefit from getting everybody into Vision Pro, although Vision Pro kind of lost its steam a little bit from when it was first launched. So they're
A lot of
again, well, but the reality is, I mean, again, the presence, what it did, the price point, the battery life, it was a developer kit. It was never meant to be a
Sure.
product, but everybody treated it like a product because Apple put it on their website. And
But
so suddenly now we're
because Vision Pro was not a big part of this keynote.
no,
I
almost.
find it surprising we're talking about all of the ways that the iPhone 16 was built from the ground up. Such a stupid, meaningless, emotional phrase. But that wasn't one of the things. Hey, we're really looking at this design, and we know people are going to want to start shooting their video this way so it preserves their memories. And then when you're ready to take the plunge on spatial computing, you've got content that's ready to go. Before you take the plunge, it still looks great video. It's iPhone video. People are going to love it. But then once you get your eyes into this headset, you have this content and it's ready. But again, it's like they're not tying those pieces together because right now everyone is so sort of like ratcheted on this AI conversation, which hasn't moved the needle significantly for consumers. You still like look at every study that comes out, you say AI is in the product, it reduces consumer confidence in that product. You start saying like, well, is this a purchasing recommendation that you would make? AI reduces the likelihood of people buying into those systems. And the only things that people seem to have latched onto are all of the free for now, but won't be free forever kinds of make it cool. Like ChatGPT, oh, I've got all these tokens and I can do this stuff and it's free now. But they're talking about $2,000 subscriptions per user for businesses. So it's not going to be free forever because that's a failing business model.
If you buy a Pixel, like not the highest end model that came with a year for free, but a lower model where you got to pay $20 a month and you keep it for 7 years that the software lasts for, that is $1,680 in subscription you will pay on top of your Pixel. So you will pay like $2,500 by the time you are done.
It is about
the price doesn't go up. That's if it doesn't go up.
To me.
You know, it could be $20 a month this year, but what if next year it's $25 a month and then $30, and by the time you're 7 years out on that 7th year, it's $50 a month because there's some other, additional features. What was weird to me is today I read a couple things that Apple could have talked about that I think would have been more exciting. 45 watt, it's 15, what is it? 15 volt 3 amp or whatever. It's the same thing that like the Ultra Samsung phone got on every model of the iPhone 16. So they've had the Secure Enclave for a while, but now there's a part of the chip that's called the Xclave that I was reading about that it links. So it was interesting to me. So you know how on the iPhone and on like Android devices they've had where you get the icon that tells you your camera and your microphone's being used, and it's like a blue or a yellow or an orange. So they've linked part of the chip to the hardware of that. So third-party apps can't just use software to spoof to get around it. It's actually linked to hardware to secure it.
Nice.
Why didn't they talk about that? Like that's a huge security, like great security thing. Or 25 watt, like they breezed by 25 watt with MagSafe, which is not like 50 watt like some of the others, but it's still like, it's funny because Qi 2 just was like a thing that they're like 15 watt, and Apple was like, forget that, we're just going to come out with a 25 watt on the,
I feel like that
they didn't touch on these things.
So to that last one specifically, and one of the reasons why I wonder if Apple didn't make more noise about that, I think we're starting to see sort of that 2 to 3 year phase of phones that started with MagSafe. And they're still out in the market, they're still out in the ecosystem, but like I saw another thread like John Redinger. Hey guys, so what's the battery health on your iPhone 15s? Mine's already down to 89%. And you're like, your phone's less than a year old. You're burning the capacity of your battery. And these are all the same people that will rush into a comments thread when I say I don't care about wireless charging to talk about how convenient it is to have to buy lots of
So
wireless charging pads to charge their phones way slower.
yeah,
And apparently, it is becoming an epidemic on the iPhone 15s that the battery health is draining faster on this generation of phones than people feel like previous
yeah,
iPhones have
yeah.
lasted.
The,
So again, it's like every single time you make one of those kinds of features better, I wonder if there isn't some kind of Apple pushback at the executive or the marketing level to say, well, don't call too much attention to that, because then you might have a bunch of people complaining about
well,
how their 6-month old iPhone already doesn't charge
so
all the way.
with the testing that I've done with that, so when the first iPhones came out, they had like the MagSafe
Hmm.
Hmm.
stuff. Um, my wife, well, she had a 12 mini. I had the 12 Pro Max. I used
Oh yeah.
Apple's chargers. My battery health after a year was still like 95%. You know what her mini
Hmm.
was after a year? 83%.
I was about to say 89,
Because
Yeah.
but
she was using third party, like a third party one, and it wasn't official rated. So the thing that I've noticed with people that are talking about like their battery health being crazy like that, they also have 547 charging cycles, which is not like a typical like one per day charging cycle. They're like using it on their Tesla charger that's not an official like official charger.
Right, right,
So and
right.
then but
It's
with
just like
that
an
people
old
people
cheese
would
charger.
complain if Apple went and said, "You know what? You have to use our wireless charger because it's going to destroy your battery health." Like if they just shut it off and said you can't use the Tesla one because
Well,
it's
I
bad for
mean
your,
that's like Samsung
which is
blaming
kind of,
paint
I feel
flaking
like they
off on the
kind of should
fold
though, like
on
because for
third-party
example with
chargers.
wired chargers though, if you went and plug a wired charger into your phone and it's trying to provide current to your phone will deter your phone can determine like what it allows in, right? As
yeah,
far as like
Right.
voltage and amperage. So why so on the wireless side, I feel like they should be able to do the same thing and say like, no, this is bad for your phone. You just can't
Okay,
use that
so
charger.
I don't have any specific insight on this. It's not like I know the science, but I will point you to iFixit's study. They recently did a really great rundown on Qi, and they were looking at different types of Qi chargers and then what happens. And one of the reasons why we can't have the exact same setup there is because of how coils need to align. And so even when you're using magnets, if coils are slightly out of alignment, basically they just have to cook. You just have to turn everything up to the max and you waste a ton of electricity and that generates a ton of heat
Yeah. Yep.
and then that cooks the internals on the gadget. And so that's one of the things that will reduce even when you're using all of the Apple approved stuff, you can't always perfectly account for every single situation where with magnets it's not going to sort of end up slightly out of alignment or slightly off.
Hmm.
It's one of the things that's really frustrating about the Pixel 9 Pro XL is the coils are slightly off from the previous generation phone. And on the loaner that I have, the person who loaned me their Pixel 9 Pro, loaned me a case, and the
oh,
case has the magnets where it should have been on the Pixel 8, but it doesn't line up on
oh
the
wow,
Pixel 9. So when you snap it, the coils, it'll still charge, but the coils are out of alignment, which is horrifically inefficient, generates a ton of extra heat,
oh
and
no,
you
I
probably have a whole wave of early cases that were built on that older idea of like,
They,
well, on the Pixel 8 Pro, it's right around the logo, so we'll just make the magnets there.
yeah,
The
I
magnets need to be
know
shifted on
of
the
at
case
least
too.
3 cases that have been re they've had to redo the
Yep.
cycle of, including our buddy Carl who makes
Yeah,
his
it's
lovely Thinborn
tough.
cases had to like
And again,
re
because like,
and
how
like
is a smaller company
Andar
supposed to
had to redo
know?
redo a cycle though Andar had to do that
mhm.
with some S24 Ultra cases. That's why mine took a little bit to get to me, like when they are like, hey,
Yeah.
we want to send you
The
this.
one I'm curious is I
And
really like the Peak Design cases, and they have their own magnetic system, but theirs is so that you can have like snap-on accessories and you can
mhm.
mount to your tripod really easily. But I'll be curious to see, will their Pixel 9 Pro case offset the magnets, because that could really screw up their other camera attachments, because you've got to get to this like lock-in plate. But if the magnets are off for your charging, and you try and stick it to a charger and it's off a little bit, but that's where see, it's stuff like that. It has this huge ripple effect when a company doesn't work with their partners to get that kind of stuff done. I'm very disappointed how Google
not
played that out.
all and not all MagSafe is equal. So you have like MagSafe compatible, but then you have like MagSafe certified. So MagSafe compatible is we have a ring on
MagSafe adjacent.
We have a ring on here,
MagSafe
but
Pro
we
Ultra
haven't
Plus.
actually worked with Apple to like certify it, and we don't have the line to actually line it up. And then MagSafe certified is like optimized for it. So you know that you were talking about like the whole article with like the if it's slightly off. I did some reading when MagSafe first came out, and part of the like science behind it and the idea, like with Apple doing the idea was like, okay, if we're gonna have wireless charging, the inefficiency with regular wireless charging previous to that was up to 70%, which means like if you had a 25-watt charger, you could essentially only get 7.5 watts because you're only getting 30 watts of that passing through. MagSafe, if with the testing that they did, if you have MagSafe certified, it like flip-flops it. It's an 80%, it's like a higher efficiency. It's like an 80%, 70 to 80% efficiency. And the problem though is that, like anything, any company can just use it, but they don't have to do it correctly. Like they don't have to go to the company and it will work, because Apple can't just be like, well, we're going to shut it off. I think
that's why
they could require some NFC chip, but then people are going to be mad and be like, well, Apple's so, just going for money. So like, how do you create a standard for it?
The other direction, I think that's why Apple just gave the magnets to the Qi group. So Qi 2 is basically MagSafe.
It's original,
and that way, so Apple kind of gets to wash their hands of it. They don't have to do what you're talking about.
And then they're coming out with the newer. And well, what was interesting too is people are like, Qi 2, that's only 15 watts. That's a standard, so it has to do that, but it can go faster. So like theoretically, Vivo could do Qi 2 at 50 watts if they really wanted to. There's no where the previous versions kind of had
a baseline, but there's no
there was a max. There was like a 5 to 15 watts on the previous, where now it's like, well, you can kind of do whatever you want. So it's interesting, and that's one of the
excuse me.
As far as devices though, it's funny because you're talking about like this year with things all over the place, and I think that the 16 and 16 Plus were the more dramatic changes. Like, as far as like, they still use the old ultra wide cameras, but like, and the cameras didn't really change from last year, but they added, which people are gonna have their thing, but they got both the action and the camera control button or whatever, and they got a lot of the like pro features, like, and they're not just using last year's pro chip in the base model phone, which I guess they could have technically done, because it would have still done.
So some people are saying that there might be some differences in like binning chips, but I feel like that's a better solution than having an older chip.
So
like Apple's strategy there, I don't think works as well.
The regular A18, it has 5 GPU cores, and the A18 Pro gets a 6th. The memory bandwidth is a little bit different, and the caching speed is different. So the Pro chip gets faster caching. Probably why some of the camera stuff, like loading and some of the like the 4K 120 stuff and some of that was limited to the Pro chip, because you'd have lower caching, and obviously you need the faster caching and the faster memory bandwidth. And I mean, the other thing is, they're still using the slower USB-C port on the base model, which, I mean, but the funny thing with that is that's still like, if you wanted to plug a USB-C drive in and do video, okay, even fast video, like high-end, like Sony, some of them is 150 megabit per second for their video rate.
So Sony seems to be the top,
USB 2 is
for
still going to be faster than at 480 megabits per second. It's still going to be faster than your video you can record. So, but 4K 120, I think you're gonna start maxing out and gonna have issues. But I just have a really, it's weird because with everything you see Apple do, where they're like, okay, we're gonna do this in the Pro, and then the next year we're bringing it to the baseline. Like next year, are we gonna see them bring 4K 120 then? And we probably will, but I don't think it's gonna be like the ProRes, the log, the HDR, and like all the
Honestly,
full-fledged 4K
so to
120 that's on the Pro models. We might see a
that
basic
question,
regular.
if you say 4K 120, I say it does not show up on iPhone 17 or 18, because like we have phones that still don't have 120 hertz refresh rate displays. Like Apple is fine drawing a line in the sand and saying no, you got to spend more if you're going to get this, which is something that now we just take for granted in mid-range or Android land. I seriously don't think that the at least iPhone 17 is going to come with upgraded features like that. I feel like a lot of this just starts looking at like iPhone 17 is going to be like an iPhone 16s, where so many of their new strategies and so many of their new services are data center and cloud and AI and all that other stuff that you can kind of coast. You can kind of keep slow playing. They added the button. That was a big change. iPhone 17 remains largely untouched from iPhone 16. And then maybe for iPhone 18, they can talk about some other type of camera improvement.
I will say though, with that, like Samsung and OnePlus did 4K 120, but when you are playing it back, you're playing it back at a lower frame rate to slow it down. So the display itself wouldn't necessarily need to do 120 hertz because
well, that's true. You can
for
always
like
watch
their
it
kind of pitch for it is like, hey, you're gonna slow it down to 60 or 30 or 24 to get the slow-mo effect.
That's the Xperia 1 Mark II. Is that
that's
you
kind
shot
of what
4K
they did
120, but you only used it for slow motion, and you only saw it, I think, in half speed or in quarter speed. But then for the OnePlus and for the Xperia 1 Mark III, it was, you could watch it in real time. It was real time video, and on the OnePlus 10 Pro, you had a 120 hertz display. So if it becomes one of those things, I seriously doubt it will be a 4K 120 mode. A 4K 120 mode. It'll be a 4K slow motion mode, and then that they'll do what you're talking about. But again, you won't have control over it. It'll just be slow mo on the rails.
Because like the regular iPhones now do this. Like for example, you could do 1080p. Like 1080p, you've been able to do slow-mo with 124 or 120 and like 240 and so and they've been doing that on the lower end iPhones. So that was my only thought, like in the way that Apple kind of marketed it, was a slow-mo mode. It wasn't like we're doing this so you can watch it back in 120. So that was my only thought of like, hey, they're already marketing it ready for when they bring it to the lower end iPhones next year to say
maybe
we already marketed it as that and we can bring it on the lower end. So I kind of like the camera button in the orientation.
It's just
because when I looked at it, I was like, it's right where your thumb is, so you don't have to reach up to like the volume button or your power button. It's right there, and then when you rotate sideways, it's right where your pointer is. In all these years, one of the things that I've kind of been annoyed, like people are like, well, you can just do it on screen, but how much you get that pinky fatigue hurts so much when you're doing it on screen. I'm like, about time they bring a button onto the side, but it's not just a regular button. And people are like, well, where did they get this? If you think about it, they're using the same technology that their haptic trackpad uses. That's been around, or way back with the home button when they made it like from a physical button to a haptic. This technology is there. And
the only thing that I have to skewer them for, and I have to pick this apart, is, people have been making this kind of back and forth comparison. We had someone in the chat, and I can't remember, I think it might have been Carl, who was talking about whether or not this is a feature that stays on the phone. I think it stays. I think Apple will commit to this. But it's still that problem of, one of the main things that you're showing us that it can do is like control your camera and take photos.
Yeah.
So you can do that in a shutter button. Like that's what Sony uses. It's a dual stage shutter button. It's a practical, physical button, and it does exactly what you need it to do. Apple's implementation here is getting all this credit, like it's going to be this great camera control feature, but things like half press to focus aren't going to work at launch. And they've already said it's going to take them months to come up with a software patch that will enable that as a feature that you could customize for this. So you get this like zooming effect, but we kind of solved zooming with the volume rocker.
Yep.
So on a Sony, you use the volume rocker because you're holding it like a camera. You use your little volume rocker and then you take the photo with the shutter button. We already kind of figured this out with buttons. So it's cool that now we can use this as some other type of action or shortcut in other places in the phone. I totally get that. But it seems like we have come up with the Apple version of something, and now the Apple version of something is not the most streamlined, polished, ready to go version for consumers. The Apple version now feels like the beta test, the public beta that then they'll figure out how to refine it after it's already out to consumers. All of the years that we've spent where people will tell me, oh yeah, but on Android you get a new feature and it's a gimmick and it's not worth it and it's unpolished, and then when Apple does it, they'll do it right. Well, now you have a shutter button that can't focus. So they're not getting it right. It's like it doesn't just work at launch.
I'll be
It's gotta
curious to
get
know
an update for it.
I'll be curious to know like what it will come out with, because they said that at the event, but then it's like 2 weeks until the phone's actually out, and they're already
Yeah.
doing weird like beta stuff, like pushing stuff out faster now. And some like they pushed out the 18.0 beta fast. Apparently the reason we didn't
Did I freeze or did he freeze?
I think he froze.
Oh no, Michael Peppertech. So one of the videos that I have coming out soon, though, is how pinch to zoom is probably ruining your photos. And so for
I saw
me,
that.
it's kind of funny because like using your finger as a zoom rocker means that you end up in between
Lenses.
your different camera sensors.
Oh no, absolutely. And you most of the time, if you're not paying attention, you may be leaving, and you don't realize that. And then especially if your device processes differently between sensors, you end up having a I see this all the time. But yeah, no, I'm still kind of, and when Michael kind of jumps back on, I'm like, so the consensus was a few years ago when they took the headphone jack is that they had no space for that, right? I remember that conversation. They needed to put a bigger
You
battery.
needed to think of to get the new Taptic engine, which didn't impact the inside of the phone at all. You needed to get rid of the headphone jack, and on 2 generations of iPhone after, they would just put in like empty plastic space because they needed that space. TK. They
Okay, no,
needed
just
it.
wanted to double check. I wanted to be. I mean, I didn't do the homework on that one. I was not available during that episode of Friends, but yeah, but this button we have space for. Okay, piece here. Now we have a use for it. I mean, don't get me wrong. They the conversation between you back and forth between you and Michael obviously have a lot of different point of views. Obviously, there's a lot of good positions put on from both sides. I looked at the event and you know, while Michael's kind of coming back on, because I think we kind of posed the question first and Michael answered it, and we're about an hour into it, he didn't really answer. So it felt like any other Apple event. I mean, we knew I knew intelligence was going to be a big part of this conversation. This is their big push into it, and it was that essentially did not disappoint. The changes they did to the hardware, the slightly bigger display, the smaller bezels, again, iterative updates every year. This is typically what you would expect. The 16 series, the 16 and plus, as you guys said as well, I agree. I think these are the ones that had the most improvements over from a year to year type of an experience. More than likely, that's where their bread and butter is anyways, because I don't think not everybody's going to go for the Pro and the Pro Max. The 16 and 16 Plus, I think, is
what's
kind
of crazy to me is, at least the last time I was looking stuff up, is that it's becoming an almost perfect thirds. That when people are buying an iPhone, almost a third of their audience are now buying Pros. Like they have moved their customers up the food chain in a way that every other company wishes they could,
Hmm.
and that now like a good solid middle third are going to buy that year's numbered phone, non-pro phone,
Yeah.
and then it's now becoming less of the pie are buying a year older phone.
Yeah. Hold on.
So the
Let me bring
shrinking
Michael back
market,
in there. Yeah. Yeah. No,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
I'm with
yeah.
you.
The
Well,
shrinking
that was
market for
interesting. My
iPhones.
internet went out.
Hooray!
And right
But
around when I was about to connect up to my phone and come back in like the worst angle up the nose you could get,
Yeah.
I walked back in here and I was like, wait a minute. The stream's playing on YouTube again. Internet must be back on.
hooray! But yeah, that kind of blows my mind a little because in
Yeah.
Android land, the vast majority of phones are sold under $500. That's the shrinking market for Apple from all the analysts that
They're
I've
able to
seen.
convert. Yeah. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think
It's
it's the you know
it boggles the mind.
you're in it for a while. You go to the plus. You have the larger phone. You have the larger battery, and then suddenly now you're looking at it with like, well, for a little bit more, I could get the Pro. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
or I can go to the Pro Max. So I absolutely, and I think if it works for them,
I'm already spending $40 a month. I might as well spend 45.
yeah. I mean, the reality. Well, actually, if there's anything else to be said, kind of like they were able to keep their prices the same, while everybody else is like there was so many articles and articles like posts on this talking about the fact that Samsung is still selling their phone at the most expensive. Like the S24 Ultra is more expensive than the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Like
Yeah.
I'm like Samsung. I think what
Well,
you're doing here is this is where you
I,
put the sales. But yeah, no.
again, I saw way too many people on Threads trying to play that card like, hey guys, you can't say that iPhones are expensive anymore. Look, the Pixel's basically the same price. And you're like, don't do that. Just because another company is copying Apple and raising their prices doesn't mean that iPhones
Are
aren't
cheap.
crazy expensive.
Yeah. No,
Like,
no. I would like to somebody put out a story and say, hey, the brand new iPhone 16 series is a cheap option. It's the cheaper option or
oh,
the cheaper
go to
flagship option for
Threads.
2024.
Apple Threads right now is all about like, look, guys, there are more. Look, there's a phone that's more expensive than the iPhone. At the same
Again,
time, all of those people would be the first to say that no matter what green bubble you are, you must be broke because you have an Android. But now
it's
they're
like,
using that as their justification that iPhones are reasonably priced.
Juan, you have
And
to
it's
look at it.
just,
You have to look at it the same way where Huawei just released that trifold phone. We were talking with Michael about this, obviously in pre-show. If we're looking at it at $1,000 per fold, that device is $2,800. You're saving
yeah,
$200, so you're just not doing the math right, bro.
that's right.
Just understand the hierarchy of panels per square inch, per square footage and hinge. That's what that. Yeah, no, it's like the reality of the matter is, yeah, everybody's copying everybody. Everybody's looking at somebody, everybody else's homework, and they're changing it slightly just to make it look like it's theirs. And the
So
reality is just weird. Yeah, that's not.
I do want to shift gears, and again, because we always claim that our show is roughly a 90-minute podcast.
Yes, that claim has exactly been true.
I feel like
since the beginning.
I
The
feel
claim,
like
not the
both
actual
of
show.
you have kind of landed. I don't really feel like I need to expand much on the Apple keynote. I already said I felt it was really underwhelming, but what both of you brought up. Sorry, hold on 1 second. What both of you brought up kind of already covered the main points that I was going to talk about. I feel like iPhone 16 represented more of an improvement year over year, and I'm less whelmed by the Pro. Just closing thoughts on Apple and the keynote. Was there anything else that either of you saw, or that either of you have like kind of seen coverage on, that got you excited about? Because they touched on everything. They touched on watches and earbuds. I mean, AirPods Max got a new color, I guess.
Colors,
And
yeah.
USB-C, but you still can't shut it off with a button, and there's no knowing whether you're going to be able to just do like C to C for audio, and like is it going to do lossless or not? Because I would think you should be able to do C to C now, because like in the past you had the like lightning to
Adapter
3.5
thing?
millimeter,
Yeah.
and then you had to have a 3.5 millimeter to lightning adapter, and then if you got
Yeah, it
the
was
new
great.
phone, it had to go 3.5 to USB-C, so you were going lightning to 3.5, 3.5 to USB-C. Now you could just do USB-C to USB-C instead of USB-C to 3.5 with 3.5 to USB-C. Like, it's one connection at least. Like, they could do that.
I don't appreciate
lightning,
this
you
tone,
couldn't do
Michael
lightning to
Peppertech.
lightning. So like do that. It's dumb. Like
This
give
tone,
me a power
Michael,
button or let
what
me press
Apple,
and hold. You know, every iPhone you could press and hold the side button and the volume button, right? To shut it off, you press and hold like the
Yeah.
side button and the volume button, and it brings up and you shut it off. Let me press and hold the Siri button and the crown or whatever you want to call it on the AirPods Max and turn them up. You could do that with a software upgrade.
You're being
like literally
glib.
a firmware
what Apple
upgrade
does
to do
is
that.
elegant. What Apple does just works. And how
I
dare
get
you
with
besmirch
earbuds.
Apple?
I get with earbuds like you want to put them in a case to have them shut off because you don't want them just like shutting off out and about and you can't ping them or whatever. But
sure.
they're headphones. Once you've put them in a case, I'm pretty sure if you lose headphones, you'd probably lose your own head while you're at it. So like,
Yeah.
I know.
great.
For me, I don't think they. I mean, the only other feature that was surprisingly not mentioned at all, but it was in the specs, was the fact that now finally support video pausing. So that's something that we've had on Android side for quite some time, as you're recording video. But other than that, realistically, I think, yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how things kind of go. The initial. We're not looking at reviews, but the initial videos that we saw were from the actual show. A lot of impressions, just basically holding new devices, and as you said, a lot of that tech has to come through. And I think 18, if I'm not mistaken, iOS 18 wasn't going to be going live till October anyway. So the devices are going to be launching with 17 or whatever the latest version of 17, and then the 18 beta should be basically or officially
It's so weird.
coming out.
Same
so
same thing with Google.
iOS
It's so weird.
18 release client was released was it yesterday? So the
18?
new phones will launch with 18, but it's 18.1 that brings all the Apple Intelligence features that you'll have to wait.
So they got them on the right version,
and they
but not
kind
the
of
right.
have to do that because the last 2 years they really messed up and they had to do like a weird 17, like they had to do 17.0.2 and 16.0.2 last year because the 0.1 like you could be running 16 or 17.0 and then you were running the beta on the new device and you couldn't transfer because you weren't on the same version. So then they released a 0.0.2 so you could update to that and it wasn't a beta and have that on both. So when you transfer it over, so this year they're like, we're not going to release any like 0.1, 0.0.1. We're just going to do an 18 update. Have that be on the existing, have that be on the new device. When you go to transfer, you don't brick your device. You don't have any weird issues.
And you're talking about migrating your data, right? You're transferring your data from your old device to the new device. Yeah, no, I understand.
It took them 3 generations to figure out we don't release a new beta that's beyond another version of a beta.
I wonder if they're going to
another
fix
version
that.
of a beta.
Well, no. So my question would be is I wonder if they're going to fix that with people that are on the 18 beta that's already ahead of where the initial release, the 18 release is in there. Will they allow them to be able to back up their data from those devices? Because they've been running the beta on, let's say, last generation Pros and the Pro and the Pro Max.
So
Can they transfer their data, or will they need to wait?
So what will happen is because the new ones are on an 18 version, and if you're on a 18.1 beta, it's still 18.
Okay, well maybe
when you
that
go to do
fixes
the
it then.
new one, what will happen is it will ask you, do you want to install the beta on your 16 before transferring?
Oh, I hope
or
not,
do you
yeah.
want to just set it up as new or whatever? So in the past, that wasn't even like really that wasn't really an option because it was like you were going from like 16.9 to like 17.1, so it wasn't in line the same version. They're like, at least we're in the same main subset. It's kind of like Android 14 if they did a Android 15 and then but you are like 15.1 but you are on a Pixel and Android 14, you would have to kind of be on like Android 15 to align in the same scheme of things.
I think
'cause you're on a
in
previous
general,
generation.
Android doesn't really have as much of an issue with
No,
transfer data because
but-
it doesn't transfer. That the backup, it's not really doing backup and restore, right? So Android does more file transfer and settings transfer. So as long as there's no major overhaul of Android, that's usually not an issue. Like when we
Yeah,
went from
yeah.
10 to 11, That was a pain in the butt.
That
Now,
was
I think
bad.
overall, you could be on 15 to 14, transferring data from one device to the other. Usually, you're okay. Also, if
Mhm.
you're using third-party software transfer content, that usually circumvents it.
Yeah.
But iOS is a specific issue because it is
Well,
it's based on how they architecturally build their devices, and they typically don't like to cross-pollinate data from one to the other, at least not initially. But
one of
again,
the things that they changed a couple years ago that helps with that is when you do them, it's not doing device to device anymore.
no,
So
it's an iCloud backup. Yeah.
but when you even when you do that, it's basically grabbing the apps from the App Store and re-downloading them. So it's not like
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
so
I
you're
still
getting the
have.
latest version, and it's similar to like what you're talking about with Android, where it's not like
Mhm.
it doesn't matter. It's as long as it can say like here's the apps, here's their positioning, here's the settings.
Mhm.
It works, so you don't have to worry like, hey, I'm actually transferring directly from a phone, and if that signal disconnects, I'm SOL or my old phone dies. Like
Right.
once it started, you're good to go, or you don't even have to have the phone on you anymore, which
No,
is kind of
I'm
nice.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
But
So,
to
just
kind of
while we kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
like get to the I mean,
To
we'll
the good
probably
part.
run a little long. I feel like it's what we do. Um, I'm not sure how I feel about a big trifold mini tablet. What are your guys' thoughts on Huawei Mate XT Ultimate
Ah,
Edition?
okay.
Go
Uh,
TK, go.
no. I mean, like, it's just that's exactly how I felt. Thank you very much for joining my TED talk. No, it's a, it's definitely a very. I mean, okay, so we've already had a hard conversation to make a statement saying, look, foldables have a space. Foldables are functional. Foldables are the way of the future in the sense of multitasking, and it's the next level of what we're able to do with our devices. And it's been a generational upgrade, and we've seen a lot of improvements. The last year, actually, alone, we've seen new players come into the market and bring in new devices. I mean, for me, the biggest thing I'll probably say is, I mean, this guy. This is, hopefully you guys could see, and no, of course not. That's, oh, here. Okay, so it's Sony, and Sony doesn't want to focus on the phone. But so this is the Honor V3. Okay, this device is by far the thinnest foldable on the market to date. It's almost as thin as thick as the Xiaomi, the new Xiaomi Mix Fold that they just released. And I got a chance to, because I found somebody that had one while I was at IFA last week, and I got a chance to be like, okay, let me see the comparison. They're basically just about the same. But those
Let me see. Let me
devices,
see. Let me see.
no, but like, because when a company makes a claim, says, we released the thinnest phone, and then by all purposes, like when I compare it to the Fold, when I compare it to the Open, it is thinner, right? But like when you start talking about like, okay, well, there was this other device that was released that also potentially could be the same. So you want to run it. Um, I already thought we already hit the limit. And I'm not going to lie that I heard a lot of rumblings about this device last week while I was at IFA, walking around, listening to people. People were kind of like listening. There's rumors, the rumor mill basically saying that, because Huawei wasn't at the event. That was
Yeah.
first. I typically, Huawei and Honor are always there. Honor was there. Actually, Google was there. That's another weird thing. They had a small
Yeah.
booth right next to Honor. Like when you pass Hall 6 and you're trying to look for Honor, you'll see Honor's big booth. And then in the bottom right corner of the Honor booth is Google Pixel. Like you're like, what? Honor
Like
powered by
a strange growth on the
no,
side
but
of the
it was
Honor
such a
booth.
genius way for the team at Google when they were building their booth to put a side sign saying Google Pixel. But
That's like
it
that's weird because
it was very no,
that makes me think of the 6P was Huawei
yeah,
made the
the,
six, so like
Yeah.
it, it was
Good
a
times.
it was a lot of things. And I'll say this, I am seeing, I'm not going to deny to say that there is a lot of similarities in the, if we looked at it only as a dual, as a standard foldable between the
Sure.
V3 and and then the new Huawei Fold. Does it make sense? Is it going to make me go run and say, look, I think this is the right solution? I start wondering about, hinge and weight distribution, and also just functionality. Now, the phone by itself, when it's folded all the way, is about the thickness of a Galaxy Z Fold 6. So
Mm-hmm.
it's already thinner than what the V3 is.
Yeah.
and it's supposed to be able to hold it a lot more weight, more parallel level weight. So from an engineering standpoint, I applaud Huawei obviously for the ability of designing this. It's not the first one we've seen. We've seen a lot of demos before, not demos, a lot of prototypes and so on, but this is an actual product. So but I also feel like this is such a niche, again, almost $3,000 when you convert it to US, for what it offers. And I feel like, congratulations on his, achieving such a, engineering feat there and making it happen. I don't feel like a lot of us are going to be running for it. I just from a form factor, having it let me open and kind of a thing, like it just, there has to be a certain form factor.
I think there's some interesting ideas, like when you open one panel, I suppose you could then use the rear cameras as your selfie cameras without fully like transforming and stuff like that. But it to me, it's definitely like $2,800 against, say, buying a OnePlus 12 and a OnePlus Pad 2, which will both be more powerful than this trifold.
Oh, you could achieve obviously much better solution for multitasking and performance by, again, yes, the 12 and the Pad for sure. But yeah,
the demonstrations I saw were a little confusing on that, because if you opened what you thought would be the reasonable part to open first to then use the rear cameras, it was like try opening it a different way. So you got to do like the additional steps where it's kind of like you're opening the last set of screens instead of the first.
It's like you've got to open out so it becomes
I am trying to point at the screen like I have control over, like you can see my hand on this. No.
But yeah, so you open out the camera module side first, so it's like you were opening, a normal foldable, and then you extend the third panel, where to me it should be you open the top panel first and then you can turn that around.
Yep.
And shoot in the same way that we do on a regular folding phone. I have a screen here and the camera here, and I can take a selfie with the rear camera.
And the way this trifold is designed, if you did do it the way you think you should, the other screen's protected, and the only screen that's exposed would be the one facing towards you, so you're not like mistouching anything. Yes. But you have to open it. You have to open it the way that a single fold device does, exposing all of the screen. And then if you drop it, the edge isn't going to be protected because there's no way to put a case that goes around that. What I wonder is how did they design this? Because when it's folded, essentially the screen has to be in total longer than when you open it, because you have to have extra for it to curve around the... So where does the extra screen go? Like, does it go? It can't. There's no bezels. Like, where does that go?
No, exactly. In the older design, they used to. In the older design, they used to have that little bump on the side in their old foldables. Remember when they had the foldable on the outside? That was their main bread and butter. So they used to have an extra piece where the extra display kind of rolls in or rolls out a little bit. This one, it's like, because it bends on two different configurations, right? One on the inside bend and one on an outer side bend. So there is no space for it to go, but I almost feel like when it's open all the way, there is a little bit of extra on the side, but you just don't see it. And maybe because the images are not very clear, maybe there is a little bit of a roll off on one end of it, because it has to stretch. It has to figure out a way where when it's actually closed and open.
From what I saw from the one video is this has more of a valley than like the V3 you're holding. So do they use a valley in one and a mount in the other to counter? So essentially they negate and basically counter that additional. Because if you think about it, they could kind of do that, and it would only have to be just a little bit, and you wouldn't notice it. Because you clearly, on the part that where the left hand is, you couldn't have it dip. You couldn't have it dip in.
No.
It has to go up. And then in the other part, it can't go up. It has to dip in. So I'm being serious. They could essentially negate each other a little bit, enough to kind of counter that roll off. And because it's so thin, it's not like you have as much of a curve around it as like the inside of like a Z Fold. So essentially each part, each segment has to be 2/3 the thickness of just one segment on the Z Fold 6 because the entirety, which, if you think about it, with a regular Fold, you still have 3 layers of glass, the 2 on the inside that sandwich, plus the additional on the outside, and 2 panels. This one has 3 layers of glass, but it just has an additional panel. So in order to make it in total the same thickness, they're just 2/3 as thick on each part, which is why your V3, when you close it, is entirely like
It's
three
entirely
quarters
shut.
of the thickness of a Z Fold.
Yes, but it's also because it actually the
Because
display actually does go into the hinge a
Mhm.
little bit, so that it's able to go
So,
fully flat in there.
because if you took that one screen off, I had to do the math, and I'm doing math at 12:30 at night to
Nah.
figure out like 2/3 of the thickness, 2 times 2/3 in the total.
I'll be really curious to see, because this is definitely a Halo product. This is a
absolutely.
crown jewel. It's a talking point. It's the sports car that sits in the car dealership when you're there to shop for a fuel efficient sedan. Um, so the more I've been playing around with different foldables, I still don't see where, outside of a very specific group of tech enthusiasts and productivity people seeking productivity solutions, I'm not seeing a lot of people gravitate towards foldy bendy plastic screens. They still are less than 2% of the phone market after 6 generations of Samsung trying to make this a thing. And while this is an incredible feat of engineering, I mean, again, this is a stunning display of building a product. I still don't see, or I still don't believe that there's going to be a big market for this to grow. It's just funny. Huawei puts this out on the same day that Apple is talking about a new Pro phone that's essentially the same as their old Pro phone. And for about a day, I mean, I was getting all these links. People were sending me like funny TikToks. There was one that was just shared on the Discord of this woman being like, I'm so tired of Apple. And her background is just someone looping the video of this Huawei. And she's like, look, this Huawei, it folds into thirds, and it's got 2 chargers in the box and all the accessories you would need, and it comes with earbuds, and I'm so tired of Apple. And that seems to be just like the conversation point. It's like, this is an
how
extreme novelty. This is something that looks really exciting as a conversation starter, but I don't feel like this is a product segment that really has legs. I don't see
how
where this is going to be the solution moving forward.
do we know how tall this is? Because clearly it
I
looks like
don't.
it's taller than like a normal, like single folding. Because I refuse to use the word trifold when it folds twice. We had this discussion,
Yeah, we
but a
talked about
wallet
this
does, and
a trifold wallet only has
but
2 folding seams.
a door is a bifold and
But
folds once,
but a
and
door
so do
doesn't go in your
wallets,
pocket, and a
so do
wallet
wallets,
and a
and
phone.
so do phone. And it's weird because everything has broken the language. But to me,
I
this
love
is the
it.
only this is the only way that you can fold a phone open and end up with a like 16 by 9, 16 by 10 aspect ratio. Because
Oh
once you
yeah.
fold it once, it's a square. If it's
Yep.
not, it's a very narrow rectangle, like Samsung style. But even when you open
Yeah.
it, it's still not ultra wide aspect ratio. It's still got the black bars. And what's funny to me is like the positioning of the internal camera. You notice it's like on that outer upper. They didn't put it in the corner. They put it in the middle of that panel instead of putting it in the corner.
Yeah.
So then it would like work in both orientations. And it's the one that like takes the 2 folds to get to it again. So it's not the native.
We have to relearn how to fold just to be able to use the new Huawei Fold. But I mean,
Or
it's a Vanguard product. It's absolutely. I think
yeah, it is.
unless this is going to be that one thing that pushes Samsung to say, "Hey, show us your next generation of a foldable." Samsung has shown
But
many
don't you think?
prototypes.
But don't you think like so much of this,
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to get to AR.
And
It's still going to be like
ultra
10 years
Mm-hmm.
before we have consumer facing AR, but we're trying to get there. And we're trying to get away from big, bulky, heavy laptops. And we're trying to get away from sort of these older paradigms of portable compute performance. And to me, there is an incredibly exciting level of engineering that goes into a foldy bendy plastic screen that opens into this little mini tablet form factor. But there are so many things about this that feel like a step backwards. That in terms
The
of the durability, in terms of I'm only really using this when I know I can sit and look at it and I can use it safely,
Hmm.
which is only a small step from me also considering pulling out just a bigger tablet if I'm carrying it, or a proper laptop. If I'm already sort of grading the situations where I will use this, where I won't use this,
Yeah.
the overlap is getting smaller and smaller. And because I have to make certain compromises for this experience because of the way that it's not as durable, it changes the value proposition. Like if this
the
were so much more durable and I could use it everywhere and I could use it underwater and I could do all this really cool stuff with it and it was the same as like a regular slate phone,
Hmm.
the higher price would kind of make more sense. But when you have such a higher overhead for creating one of these experiences that you could have two phones and a tablet and a really great set of headphones and a smartwatch all for the same price as this one phone tablet, I don't think this is really going to move the needle. I think instead, we're going to want to see consumers start looking at, well, how does this interface with other screens? Or can I pair this with a pair of glasses? Or will we eventually figure out VR? And then I've got a headset. And if I'm going to take the time to sit and open this,
Hmm.
I could also sit and put on some glasses. And instead of a little screen that's slightly bigger, I could look at a movie theater screen and do all my work floating out in the air. Because both Michael Peppertech, have you played with any like of these projector glasses? They say AR, but they're not really AR glasses.
So I haven't because well, I'd have to get a prescription and I'd have to have ones that can
Um,
handle my astigmatism because I have a slight
Gotcha.
astigmatism, and so it like then you're looking
That's
at,
fair.
okay, do they have ones that work? I've used like the Oculus Quest 2 and I messed with that, but I could handle that a whole of like 15 minutes before it starts hurting my eyes because of the
Yeah.
astigmatism,
Hmm.
and it wasn't wide enough, so they only
So it's
went to
like clamping the sides of your head and hurting your
no,
eyeballs.
the IPD was only 68 and mine is 69. So the new ones that go to 73 go far enough.
There you go.
But then it's like some of these weird. But one of the things I noticed with this XT too is so the way that they want you to open it, right? How I said like you have to do like the extra step to open it to be able to use the back cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Also then makes that one edge where if you angle it so your cameras are up and you're using it in like a tripod mode, that edge you have to like swing it all the way out to the third camera and then do a weird thing, because if you leave it where the one screen is folded under and then angle the other part up, you now have like not only the one screen is now like facing down against
Mm-hmm.
whatever you set it on, but also the edge. So if they
Yeah.
did the opposite, which makes logically sense,
Hmm.
you would have the back protected and then that one screen comes up, but you're also
Mm-hmm.
having the back side where the hinge that's protected is against, like, is touching the surface. Like,
Yeah.
so
I
they
mean,
need
so
to fix it.
again,
They could, that's a software thing they could change and be like, yeah, you can use it.
and
in
they
that.
should, but it's also like
And
it's funny to me because it seems like such an engineering perspective first.
Yeah.
we
So like so
designed it,
many
but
of
didn't
these,
use it.
and you've got to like, well, okay, I want to shoot video of my daughter's soccer practice, and I'm going to set this phone down on a concrete picnic table. Well, not on the plastic screen side. I'm not. Now that's definitely not what I'm
That's
gonna do.
That's the genius in this whole design, though. The thing I liked about the idea of like the way it opens, like you couldn't
Mm-hmm.
do that with a single fold because you close it and you're not seeing any screen. You have to open it essentially. But with
Yeah.
this, because of the third part, it essentially, when it is open all the way, there is no screen touching down. Where like your
Yeah.
normal foldable, there
Yeah.
is a screen touching down
You
when
have
you
the
set
outer
it down.
display.
Hmm.
The outer display. With this, it doesn't really have to do that because the one part can kind of be the cover screen, and then when you open it, it's no longer facing out. Except for, like I said, if you want to use it just as a normal square. Now, part of it is because they didn't
Yeah.
put the cameras in the right orientation. They kind of.
But again, I feel this will be purchased by select few individuals who will either baby it incredibly, or they have the money to just burn on a fun toy, and if it gets wrecked, oh well, too bad.
It was
So,
one of the biggest challenges with the earlier generations of Huawei foldables as well, when they had the external display or the
The
folding
fold
is to
out,
the
yeah.
outside. I have one here somewhere, and I remember I was very anxious the whole time I had it, and I was having
Yeah.
because I used it at IFA. Actually, that's when I got it from them, and it was just crazy scary. But
was
it
that
was
the one that
cool. It
had
looks
the
great.
rounded where it went all the way around the edge to the
Yeah,
front?
and it
Mm-hmm.
was their original before they started doing, similar to what I would call basically, like the V3, where we have an external display that's glass, and then we have the bendy display on the inside. They did those for a while, but now they're obviously going with this style. But at the end of the day, yeah, this is going to be bought by a small select number of people, and whoever has it either is going to use it, or it's just going to be basically a piece of technology that sits on a shelf or something.
What
It's
was
functional.
the
It has some purpose, and it's definitely a conversation starter. But again, even if it's the same thickness as an S20, sorry, as a Z Fold 6, it's still, yeah, just having to open it
Well,
up all the way, and somebody's like, "Hey, did you just pull a tablet out of your
speaking
pocket?"
speaking of a
You
conversation
want to
starter,
see what I have in my pocket? It's 14-inch tablet. Check this out. Like it's like pulling out the scroll to like
also,
read here.
isn't it just funny because like I don't know, like my brain does that. I'm not on. I would never declare myself like self-diagnosed on the spectrum or anything like that. But people have always done that. Is a thing in your pocket, or there's a thing, and you're like, like as dudes, we don't keep our stuff in our pocket. It like you would feel like if it doesn't. The biology doesn't work that way.
I feel like I feel like when it's closed, it's like super tall, like even taller than like the Sony's.
Oh yeah.
And it's like you're gonna have
I'm
to.
sure it's close for sure. Yeah.
Next we're gonna see the Huawei Mate XT pants, extra long pocket edition,
to.
so that you like.
Have to.
The pants have to say.
Well,
I would.
gents,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and start putting a pin in this just because we're getting to an hour 40 and I want enough time just to kind of wrap stuff up. And so starting off with Michael, thank you for jumping in and joining us on this conversation. There was a lot. I mean, it's really easy to get pithy and be like, oh, Apple. I personally not a fan of what they do at the executive level. I'm always ready to just kind of trash how they sort of present their company and especially their marketing. But it's like it's a big deal in tech, and to be able to kind of expand on those conversations and to kind of chat through some of the work that they're doing, I think it's nice. It kind of helps me kind of sort through that stuff. What do you have coming up? Tell our viewers and listeners what's going on in Michael Peppertech land, and where they can kind of track what's happening.
A lot. So, my espresso display monitor review I'll be able to do. They sent me a replacement. I had early unit issue where it was the LCD panel had like glowing from the bottom part of it because it wasn't completely glued down or whatever. So they sent me the replacement, and I've had that for a couple weeks.
Okay.
So I'll have that. And then I need to do a review on my case for my iPad, and I got to get that stuff done because then I have a stack of 6 iPhone cases from one company, and I now have Poetic hit me up. I'll have a couple coming from banks.
Nice.
I have Tudia is sending me one. I gotta hit up or Taurus is sending me one. I gotta hit up Tudia. I think Carl will most likely send me one of his thin-board cases. I have a bunch of cases I'm gonna be reviewing. One of the companies was like, "Hey, when are you gonna be able to get this done?" I'm like, "Well, the phone should be in my hand on the 21st. I need at least a week. Also, keep in mind, I do things like first come, first serve. Like, if you get me the case first, I can review it first. it doesn't matter if you talk to me first. If I don't have the case, I can't review it and I'm not going to push others out just because, and so at this point, it's kind of one of those, like, any case company that comes to me, I'm already going to have to say you're probably looking at the middle of October before I can get to you. So, Ivanki is sending me their new 2024 Thunderbolt like 3 monitor dock to review.
Nice.
Which does 3
Good
at
stuff.
4K 60. So I have new companies working with me, figuring out everything, trying to get my last hours in so I can get the YouTube monetization, although that's not as big of a deal as kind of like, I think I'd rather have working with more companies and stuff like that and just kind of get that going. And so that's what I got going on. I think I have 10 videos planned out for the next 4 weeks, 4 weeks. So
Sounds like a
That's
solid
great.
plan. Yeah.
So and then also, where will people watch those videos?
and I'm frozen, I realized.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
okay.
we just gotta. It's all right.
Remember on
So-
the audio podcast, I don't think
We're
they're gonna
wrapping the
get
show
into-
up. At this point, it's just performance.
You
art.
can check me. You can find me on the X or Twitter, or whatever you want to call it, at Michael Pepper T, and I'm at Michael Pepper Tech everywhere else.
Nice.
Absolutely.
On
job.
the Threads, the Instagrams, the whatevers, everywhere basically.
The blue skies, the Instagram, the Threads, and the X's. No, I know. Yeah, X is the only one because for some reason, I didn't realize that it was just a T there as I was trying to treat it, and I kept trying to. I spelled out Michael Pepper Tech, and I was like,
Character limit.
yeah, no, it couldn't find. No, it's okay. So
So TK,
Juan-
what do you got coming up?
Okay, we'll see. So for me, actually, I'm kind of like recovering from IFA for a little bit, so I kind of only pushed out one video this week. I have a couple of things that I'm working on, unfortunately, that are under embargo, but I have a lot of backlog, little things kind of here and there. So for me, at least for the next week or so, I want to push out some content on the Pixel 9 Pro XL. I shot a lot of good things in there. I even did I want to do this trip with the Pixel 9 Pro XL and talk about my experiences using it, but also spending some time at the Berlin Zoo, which was actually quite a bit fun. A lot of people recommended it, and I
Nice.
didn't understand why, but it is a lot of fun. It's a legit massive zoo, but they have a lot of exhibits. They have a small aquarium that is built in to the zoo. So that's going to be my main video pushing out hopefully early next week. And then a few car accessories for the Tesla. I got some carbon fiber stuff coming in, some tilty bendy stuff for the car. Not screens, but like something to help me bend the display in the car. And then getting ready maybe for another trip. I October. October,
All
September.
over the place.
Yeah. And so short story, a lot of exciting things, and IFA was a great trip. I will say this. I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. And although it's a very different convention than what we are used to, like CES and MWC, this is where there's the public can actually literally buy a $15 or €15 ticket and just walk in there. So when the show starts, you see these families with their kids walking around, pushing strollers and everything. You're like, wait a minute.
It's cute.
Yeah, like, should I walk away? I'm sorry, kind of like, so it was fun. But yeah, hopefully in the next few days or so, hopefully maybe, like I said, early next week, that Pixel 9 Pro XL video content I want to push out. So for sure.
Nice.
Flipping it back to you, Juan.
Yeah, so I have kind of a written review on the Pixel 9 Pro XL. I also put out an investigative deep dive on the raw performance on the Pixel 9 Pro XL.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just some, I don't know if I would use a word like concerning, but I was a little concerned about some of what I was seeing, comparing raw images from this against other phones and like Xiaomi's and OmniVision sensors and stuff like that. So that's on the Patreon. I went pretty deep. So if you want to talk about lenses and sensor performance, that's something there too. I was going to publish a tutorial video about how pinch to zoom in your camera app can ruin your photos, but I'm going to save that for next week because today I published that video on the Android 15 beta, giving us windowed support for the Pixel tablet. It was a nice excuse to break out the Pixel tablet and just show some new UI elements that I think people are really going to like. And tomorrow, it's funny, going from Pixel tablet to tomorrow, I finally have a longer term wrap up on the OnePlus Pad 2,
Mhm.
now that I have the keyboard blade and the stylus, all the accessories, the full experience of the OnePlus Pad 2, that video is going to go live tomorrow. So there's going to
On
be a lot.
Friday the
Yeah.
13th.
Me-
Nobody's
I've got
Meanwhile, I still
storage
need to
and
do my
networking
original OnePlus Pad video and my Watch 2 videos.
Gotta
But
get on top of
I
that.
think people will, because I have some thoughts about, like, I feel like the original OnePlus Pad is still a good, like, if, like, let's say if you want to save the $50 or $79 difference or whatever, and now you can probably find it on used market even more so off. If you aren't doing the gaming and don't need like the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and maybe you don't want a 12.1 inch, maybe you want the 11.6 inch screen or whatever, I still feel like it's still a good
I'm
2024 tablet.
And not only like that it's good if you can find one, I think it's telling that OnePlus still has both. They
And
do
you still get
kind of
the
serve
data
different
share
consumers.
features that you can use with a
Excuse me.
OnePlus 11 or 12, and all that. And I did my ecosystem video, and I think people were shocked. Like, wait a minute, OnePlus has an ecosystem? Yeah, you can buy the
snuck up on
whole
me too.
ecosystem.
Yeah, before you
can
before you
buy
think
the
about it,
whole
like,
ecosystem for
Exactly.
less.
Get these buds and this watch
and the
this phone and this tablet
And if you buy the new tablet, the OnePlus 12, the new earbuds, and the watch, and like get the keyboard case and the pen, it's cheaper than a Fold for the whole ecosystem. Like it's like it was like $1,667.
Yep,
plus
it's just a
tax.
little more expensive than getting the OnePlus Open.
Yeah.
You get all that, or you could get a OnePlus Open. I love my OnePlus Open.
Yeah.
There are very few people that I would recommend. And here's the other thing. Sorry, we are going to wrap up this podcast. But the other thing that I like keeping all of our conversations focused on MSRP. But if I get a OnePlus Pad and do a trade-in, and I get a OnePlus 12 and do a trade-in, I'll probably get something like a folio case or earbuds for free. I will have had 2 trade-in deals that help bring in the prices on those things. Whereas if I go with the OnePlus Open, I only get the OnePlus Open, and I'd only be able to trade in one thing to try and reduce that price.
And my numbers didn't even include, like, if you buy the pad, you get half off the pen and half off the keyboard case. I included like full price, as in like,
full price,
I forgot to
MSRP.
order that and I'm going to order it later type of thing. Like, or, they give you a discount on buds. Like, they'll give you a discount on that sometimes too. where you
and
get,
the buds
like,
are pretty
the
good.
OnePlus Buds
off,
3 are just
50%
free right now,
off
aren't
or
they?
whatever. Or they'll throw them in. Like, I didn't include any of that. So by the time you do that, now you're talking about probably closer to the, $13.99 of an Open.
Oh yeah.
Like,
So, well, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate everybody stopping by and having this chat with us on a Thursday. There's plenty on all of these channels, on Michael Peppertech, on TK's channel, on my channel. Definitely stay tuned for all of our friends who are streaming throughout the week. If it's Gadget Goddess, if it's LaShawn, if it's Easy Computer Solutions, our friends like Barry Johnson who like to pop in from time to time. El Jefe over the weekend, Nomad Tech. Grounded Tech has started doing another stream, and I had to yell at him because he started doing another series of his own podcast, and he didn't tell anybody. And you're like, dude, if you're going to stream, let me know, because I'd share it on social media or something. But there is tons of content out there, not only from the produced videos, but from those of us who like to have these kinds of interactive conversations. So definitely
and this
keep
crazy
abreast of that.
guy, to announce to people, is going to be coming back to streaming Thursday nights starting next week.
Hey, nice.
Perfect.
At 9
Thursday.
o'clock.
I mean,
EST.
Thursday went from being the busiest streaming night of the week, and everybody left. That was I think Peachy was streaming on Thursdays for a while. Ike was streaming on Thursdays for a while.
So at one point it was Michael, Ike, and Mike. It was me, and then
That's
Ike,
right,
then
Tech King Mike, that's right.
And then you guys were like an hour. You guys would be like an hour after they ended because I was on from 7, and then there was 8 to 9, and then
so
9 to 10.
MPT,
So it was busy, and now it's basically
just
free for all.
dead.
So I'll just
MPT, you got to bring it back. You got to start doing those Thursdays, and I'll lurk in your comments.
Absolutely.
So everybody stay tuned. Lots of cool stuff. Thank you so much for dropping by, and we'll catch you guys next week on another Best of Our Week.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.